Hello and welcome once again to the Blacklist. Tony here from Forward Compatible, and I'm joined by Bryan.
What's up?
Today we decided to host a very special edition of the Blacklist Cast, where we are going to be spoiling Bioshock Infinite.
Despoiling. So it's so bad. If you've already finished it, you'd be thankful.
Yeah. So here is your one and only warning. In the event you have yet to complete Bioshock Infinite, please pause the video, come back to it at a later date. We're going to be talking about all aspects of the game, the beginning, middle, and end. We're going to be spoiling it rotten. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. Just absolutely tearing it. No, I shouldn't say tearing it a new one, but we're tearing this game apart. We're going to talk. Nothing's out of our grabs. Yeah.
So in the event you haven't finished it, come back to it later. Okay? We're all good, right?
Comstock and Booker are the same guy. Haha, I bet you wish you would have stopped it sooner.
All right. So let's kick off the spoiler cast with some initial thoughts. What did you think about the game without going into too much detail? Because we're going to start breaking it down little by little as we progress through the cast.
I would say that, although it was not my game of the year, it is definitely game of the year material. So I would not argue with anybody who said it was their favorite game of the year.
As for myself, I couldn't agree more. I'm still not sure. Thus far, I could just let you know there's three major contenders. Of course, it's July something.
So yeah,
right now. So as of July, I have three major contenders, and that's Tomb Raider, The Last of Us, and Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah, I'm on the same page.
I want to sit on them longer, especially because I just beat Last of Us a few weeks ago, and I just beat Bioshock Infinite a few days ago. So I'm trying to settle on it and let everything sink in before I really decide which one's my game of the year. But I enjoyed it immensely. It was one of the best games of the generation.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely.
Okay. Let's start off with, do you think it's a fitting entry into the Bioshock universe? What I mean by that, of course, it takes place not in Rapture, where the first two games, along with all the expansions like Nirvana's Den and stuff, took place. Of course, we're in Colombia in this game. So what did you think about all that?
I love the location. It was very different from Rapture, and I can see why it would throw people. But the general themes are still there. Bioshock, even though Rapture is a major part of Bioshock, the overall theme of Bioshock is not City Under the Sea, but questioning, let's say, tropes in stories and kind of examining or taking a closer look at, for lack of a better term, I think I like to call it isms. Every Bioshock, or at least Bioshock 1 and Bioshock Infinite, which were both done by Ken Levine, kind of examine people who go too far in their ideologies. And I think that's more of what Bioshock is supposed to be about. Whether that's being accomplished might be something else. Yeah. But I think that's his intention with the Bioshock games.
It's almost tyranny brought to the next level.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Bioshock 2, of course, didn't really follow that. It was kind of cool that you were in the... you got to play from the other side, more or less. But it was far shorter. I still enjoyed it. It wasn't a bad game, but it wasn't as good as 1 in Infinite.
No. Story-wise, there wasn't as much going on. There were some interesting things in it, and it kind of continues the story of Rapture, but it doesn't present the same kind of moral stuff. I'm not just talking about kill or don't kill, but actually, not even necessarily moral, but the idea of whether you control your own destiny and stuff like that is not really a part of Bioshock 2, whereas it's part of Bioshock 1.
Well, it was cool because, when I initially heard about it, I got super excited that you were going to be able to be a Big Daddy.
Yeah.
And then you kind of found out it was one of the first renditions of the Big Daddy,
right,
kind of
Alpha
weaker,
kind of like that, yeah.
So it was kind of like you weren't even a true Big Daddy, but whatever. We're not talking about Bioshock 2 today, right. So. All right, I did want to get, before we got into the meat of the game and the actual story and whatnot, I wanted to do a little bit of a character breakdown.
Okay.
If you will.
Yeah.
So let's start off with the man, the myth.
Okay.
Booker DeWitt.
Pretty cool dude. Flawed character, which I like. I like a good flawed hero. Very flawed, but interesting. Pretty well written. I don't know what more. What do you have to add to that?
The voice acting behind him was incredible.
Yeah.
Some of the best in a video game. Period. I also like that, the kind of anti-hero but hero all at the same time. Like you kind of in the beginning of the game, you kind of get introduced to him as a man with a pretty extensive gambling debt, and that's how he gets into this entire predicament in the first place. As more goes on, a lot gets unveiled about him, and it ends up being really, really cool. But as a standalone character, he was great. I loved it.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Then we have, of course, his sidekick in blue, Elizabeth.
Oh, I love Elizabeth. She's great. Elizabeth is fantastic. She's just, I mean, she's kind of got the manic pixie dream girl thing going, which is a bit of a trope that kind of gets overused, but she's not perfect, which is important to breaking that kind of mold.
For me, I fell in love with her as well. She's, like, in my opinion, the top 5 sidekicks in video gaming history.
Yeah, she's great.
She's right up there with, like, Ellie and Sully from the Uncharted franchise.
Which I don't know about yet, but I have started.
He's awesome. He's cool. You'll like it. So, you know, there's a handful of other spectacular ones. I'm not going into all those right now, but she was a great addition to this particular game.
And she's great because she's one of the first sidekicks to really break that mold of you don't have to watch out for her. Yeah. She knows to run and hide. She knows to take cover, and she will actually help you out in battle, which is really cool because that really wasn't. Was Bioshock Infinite the first? I don't know if it was the first to do that, but they do a very good job of it.
To do what?
To do the whole. You're technically escorting Elizabeth, but not really.
She's the cool. One of the coolest parts of her was her scavenging ability.
Yes.
Like half the time, it was a little too planned out. I mean, I played on normal, so I don't know if she helps you quite as much on like 1999 mode or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't even bother with that mode.
But like, it was a little overly convenient sometimes. Like when you were like 30 points short trying to like upgrade your armory, you're like 30 coins short, or what were they called?
You money?
And then as soon as you exit, you're like, shoot, I'm 30 short, and then all of a sudden she's like, oh, here, you need some money, and she flips you one of the coins.
Oh, yeah.
So and it
got a lot
perfectly.
Of money from Elizabeth.
Yeah, she scraped up half the money I used in that game.
Yeah.
But she always had the right ammo when you needed it. She always just throwing you guns, you know. So yeah, it was quite perfect. I think she was an excellent addition.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're not going to spoil this yet, even though we will get to it. What do you think about Comstock?
A good villain. He's the one thing I would say is that although Booker and Elizabeth are very interesting characters, some of the other characters kind of come off as one-dimensional, but it's mostly because they don't have as much screen time. Comstock has very little screen time. He's more of an entity that is around you for most of the game. Like everybody knows who Comstock is. Everybody talks about Comstock, but you don't see Comstock until the very end.
He's really only in the game for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Mostly you're just hearing recordings of him through the Vox phones and stuff like that. You're kind of hearing him over the PA system talking to the Colombianites.
Colombians?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. But you know, he's kind of giving like his messages of salvation or hate, depending on which way you look at it, because there's many like tracking themes that go throughout the course of the game, like touching on racism and there's quite a bit of it in there. It's not even subtle. There's financials. There's like the whole time period back then, kind of going off the World's Fair, even though this would have predated the World's Fair. So that was like the one in Chicago is the one they were kind of mimicking. Wasn't that in 34? Because this game took place in 1912.
I don't recall. I know that Chicago World's Fair and the Devil in the White City was an influence.
Yeah. But
I don't recall when they actually. I think it was in the 1800s actually.
Oh, it might have been 18. Man, my dates are way off. It might be 1896.
I think it was.
We're googling this real quick.
Yeah, totally. Let's check the Wikipedia.
I just did the Chicago World's Fair.
I could have done that, and that probably would have been better because I didn't find out a damn thing. 1893.
Okay, so this does not predate it. Excuse what I just said.
Well, but Columbia kind of set sail shortly before that. Like when you see the history of Columbia, the game takes place like 20 some odd years after Columbia has already floated off. Because they kind of go, and as you play through, you see the history of Columbia, which is interesting.
Yeah. As for me with Comstock, I think he was a really, really interesting villain. Some of like his. I mean, he basically starts a floating city because he disagrees with the American government.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting is he liked early American government.
Right.
He's a big fan of many of the guys on Mount Rushmore and Benjamin Franklin. As you see those guys,
3 of the guys on Mount Rushmore, or maybe 2.
Washington's in there.
Washington Adams is up there, right?
Yeah.
But Lincoln's up there, and he was not a fan of Lincoln. Who's the other one? Is it Roosevelt? It's not Roosevelt, is it?
I don't remember. Off topic. But we should probably know this, but whatever.
Yeah.
But it's cool how much he was on America's side in the beginning, and then there's a distinctive. It's Roosevelt and.
It is Roosevelt and Lincoln. Yeah. Thomas Jefferson. Yes, Washington and Jefferson.
But he wasn't in the game.
No, yeah, Jefferson wasn't he one of the
Patriots?
It wasn't one of the Patriots. I know it was Jefferson. Or I'm sorry,
I thought it was George Washington.
It's Washington.
And then I know those weird guys at the end, which we'll get to later, with the guy with the double horns. I don't even know his name coming out of his ear. That guy had little Benjamin Franklin mobs coming after you.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it was just the whole theory behind him on why he started Columbia in the first place. Super intriguing.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to the Lutesses.
Very cool characters that do not get enough screen time, so they're very mysterious, very interesting. I love that they. I mean, we might as well spoil it. They're not even brother and sister; they're the same person, just from different timelines,
split into different realities.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, and I thought it was really cool.
I did not see that coming.
I don't know.
Initially, I thought they were married.
And you could see why you would think that, because they're so similar.
When it first started, I thought that those two were... I didn't understand how they were hopping in and out of the tears quite yet, because you go through most of the game blind. Then they take this 45-minute part at the end of the game where they really explain what happened.
Yeah.
And it's up to your interpretation, a majority of it. Some of it's pretty concrete. But, so yeah, I thought they were married for a long time until... I think the first indication that I got that they were actually siblings was right around the time you were fighting Lady Comstock for the first time, because you fight her 3 times throughout the course of the game.
Yeah.
And that's when this is toward the end of the game when you fight her for the first time, but that's when I started getting a hint, because every time that you found a new terror, because you had to get the 3 of them, it let you know that gave you a Vox phone that filled in a little bit more on the story. And I think that was my first real indicator that they weren't married. So
I think there was something that calls them brother and sister, but I can't really remember all the voxophones, because you get some voxophones from them earlier.
I looked everywhere, and I only got 50, 40 or 50 of them.
Yeah, I didn't get all of them either. I got a lot of them, but I did not get all of them.
I went to I don't know how I missed stuff.
It's a complaint I have about other games as well.
That's how I feel about Last of Us.
Yeah, there are some things
I looked in every drawer. Yeah. I thought I found every little shiv door, too.
Yeah. I bet I know which one I missed in Last of Us. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
I think that they do this thing where they hide... It's not really hidden, but you really have to, walk everywhere. And, I mean, you don't have to necessarily map stuff, but you really have to keep an eye out where you're going, because if you skip one little corner of a room that looks like nothing until you walk right up against it, you sometimes miss this stuff, and it drives me nuts when it's so important to the plot like that.
Just out of curiosity, even though it's a side note, but now that we're talking about finding stuff, how close did you get to topping off all 3 of your infusions?
I think I got all the infusions, believe it or not.
Is it enough?
I know I topped off 2, and I got the achievement to top that I topped them off before I'd collected them all. I may have played it through on easy, because I suck at first-person shooters, so maybe there were extra infusions that didn't count toward the achievement. Because I got the achievement, and I kept finding infusions after that.
So you topped all 3 off?
Oh, I know I topped off 2, and I got pretty far on the 3rd one.
Okay,
I topped off health salts and shields. And I got pretty far on health. I don't know if I didn't top it off, I was 3 or 4 away from topping it off.
Okay, because I completely topped off health. And I think I got to 6 on salts and shields. So I was missing 8, basically.
Yeah.
So that was on one playthrough. I don't know where I could have missed any, though.
Did you open up all the safes and find all the Vox?
More or less.
Hidden caches?
I think so. I don't know.
There weren't that many.
I looked everywhere. I don't know. All right, anyway. With the Lutesses, I already went through it.
Yeah, they were cool. They were a lot of fun.
How about the Vox Populi?
I love the fact that that Ken Levine took two extremes that are currently in politics and put them even further extreme. So there's no choice but to have them fight.
Yeah.
It was fantastic because no matter which side of the extreme you tend to fall closer to, because I'm not saying that you're necessarily either extreme, you get to see the dark side of the one you don't like, but you also have to face the dark side of the one that you do kind of like.
It kind of puts politics in perspective.
Oh, it does. It puts it's absolutely fantastic. There were a lot of people that freaked out about this game because of the fact that they thought that the Vox Populi were being presented as heroes and the presidents and the founders presented as villains, and that's entirely not the case.
No, I don't think so at all. The founders
Well,
were
there are people who
emulated.
didn't play it. People who heard about it and said, "Oh,
yeah.
you mean the people who were..." Because the Vox Populi were based on the whole 99 movement that was going on. Based very loosely. But taking the some of the opinions of the 99% movement and kind of expounding them up to what do they call that? Where you take it to an irrational conclusion where you just go too far with it. That's what they were doing with both sides of the coin. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, I thought they were a cool supplement. It was unfortunate that they didn't go a little bit deeper into them because they were kind of nameless, faceless drones for the majority of the game. Mm-hmm. They did have a leader who we're talking about next.
Oh, yes.
But for the most part, it was a cool addition. I wish they would have... I feel like there was major, not plot holes, but there like throughout the course of this game, there's very plot-heavy sections and very big sections where nothing happens for hours and hours and hours.
That's my biggest complaint.
It's just gunplay. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they threw in a few extra hours of gunplay, like they just sandwiched them in to extend the life of the game, or the game was too big and ambitious, and they had to cut the explanation sections within those huge 3-hour gaps of nothing but running around, looting and shooting stuff, where maybe they would have explained some of this stuff in greater detail.
Yeah.
So then we could go to Daisy Fitzroy.
A very interesting character. I like that she's presented as both a hero and a villain, which is great.
She also kind of screws you.
She really does. I mean, she's not your friend.
Yeah.
It's very important.
She tries to kind of...
She acts like she is. She acts like she's everyone's friend. She's not. And I think at one point, doesn't even someone compare her to Comstock, I think?
Maybe?
Yeah, because she is kind of two-faced. She says one thing, but she actually does something else.
She screws you over, like, in the beginning, kind of, with the airship. Mm-hmm. Then, I don't know, then there was that whole very memorable scene where she's got the child or some one of the Colombians in the
in that little room,
little vault, and you're kind of trying to figure it out, and then she takes the blood and smears it on her face. It's pretty
it's a little gruesome. Daisy is cool because at first they present her as a very I don't want to say compassionate, but she's someone that you can kind of relate to because she talks about how she's been mistreated and how she's been, I don't want to say abused, but just kind of treated like shit. And she rebels, but she rebels too far.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the beginning, I was kind of under the impression that she was the leader of basically the poor of Colombia.
Right.
You know? Like, she was kind of like the spokeswoman for that entire...
For the downtrodden.
Yeah. And then it just got out of hand.
Yeah, pretty much. So. But then the question becomes, because you jump from reality to reality, whether she's like that in all the realities. Well, that's a whole other discussion.
Well, we're going to get to that down here, good sir.
Yeah.
All right, and the last character I wanted to touch on, if you want to throw another one in there, we can. Like, was it Fitz or... I don't know, some of the smaller characters. The last one I wanted to touch on that I felt was a big part of the game was the Songbird.
Oh, yeah. Songbird only comes around once in a while, but Songbird kind of represents, I guess for Elizabeth, Songbird represents prison. Songbird represents being repressed. And whenever Songbird comes around, you freak out. You can't fight Songbird. Songbird will destroy you. I
really thought you were going to have to fight him at one point.
Yeah, it seemed like you would.
It never comes about. By the end of it, I felt bad for Songbird.
Yeah.
like as the game concluded, which we'll talk about later at the end.
Songbird is trapped as Elizabeth in his role.
Yes,
or her role.
yes.
Yeah.
And at first, even Elizabeth admits that it was our only friend.
Yeah, until she realized that Songbird was keeping her there, she thought Songbird was the best.
And then he turned into the warden.
Yeah.
More or less. So, okay, so that was the character touch up. So let's hop into the meat and potatoes of this.
Okay.
Let's get into the story now. Where would you like to start? The beginning, middle, or end?
Aren't they all the same? No, let's start with the beginning of the game. Rowing up to the tower is kind of cool. It's a reference to the original Bioshock, because in the original Bioshock you swim to the lighthouse that's on an island. And you start off with the Lutesses. Mm-hmm. So right away you know that something's up.
Yep.
Just the way that they say, what do you mean he doesn't row? I mean he doesn't row.
Yeah.
Oh, you're like, oh, they know what's up. Yeah.
I thought it was really cool. Even the opening scene, still very iconic to me, where you're just looking down at your lap with the box that's addressed to Booker DeWitt. You don't even know who you are yet, unless you were watching previews for the game coming up. You find out it's you. You open it up, and then you hear the recurring line that comes throughout the course of the game: "Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt." It's the first time you're introduced to it. You're kind of starting to get the backstory again. You're wiping out your gambling debt. Basically, the Lutesses are trying to convince you to find a girl who you don't know yet, bring her to them, and you will be absolved of all your debts. You will be back to even. And that is the basis of Bioshock Infinite.
That's what starts things off, is clearing up a debt. And it must be a big one. Or not, I don't know. It was what, the early 20s, the late 1910s. So
yeah,
what was it, like $20?
Yeah,
I could cover it.
All right. Then we had I don't know if this was I guess we hop in the middle because I want to spend a long time at the end.
Okay.
I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What'd you think about the middle section?
It was good. The middle section I think is where the pacing is really off. It really kind of feels like it's plot, action, and I felt that the action sequences were just really long. Like, it seemed like there were long stretches where you weren't fighting, and there's a big, like, room where you fought or area where you fought, and then there was no more fighting again, which I felt was kind of imbalanced. The combat was still fun. I love the Vigors / Plasmids. It's what keeps me playing Bioshock, because as I've said, I suck at first-person shooters.
Powers are half the fun.
Powers are half the fun. So that
what was your favorite Vigor?
The Vigor I used the most was the Shock Jockey, because it was easy to stun the enemies and take them out. I liked the Murder of Crows, were a lot of fun.
That was a lot of good. That was fun too.
I'm trying to think what else I liked.
I actually liked the water one that you got late in the game.
Yes.
I can't think of what it's called right now. Whirlwind or something?
No, was it like not Tsunami, Riptide, something like that.
If you played the game, you know what we're talking about. There's a water one that you get very late in the game, so I'm not familiar with the name of the game. But, and then there was, what was the deflection one? I can't think of what
that was a good one.
Now.
Yeah, that one was...
The one where basically when somebody's shooting something at you, you can stop it and shoot the projectile back at them.
That was a cool one.
Reflection?
There was, let's see.
Did you pull up the chart
I pulled up the chart here.
Possession. No.
No, Possession lets you possess them. Return to Sender.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
Undertow was the water one.
Yep.
Yeah, Return to Sender was cool, but it drained your salt so quickly. You couldn't use it that much, which I guess makes sense because it's game breaking if you can use it too much.
Possession is the only way I was able to get off that boat at the end.
Ah, interesting.
I was turning the Patriots on one another.
That's a good move.
And the Patriot. Oh, we'll talk about that later because I got that. Okay. All right.
So yeah, the one thing I would say about the middle is it was kind of the pace is kind of weird. I don't know, if I had something else to say, I forgot it. Go ahead.
The middle, this is just nitpicking at this point, but if there was a low point of the game, it was the middle. Was very... A lot of action scenes were fluffed. There was a very intriguing part with the whole... When you kind of find out about Wounded Knee.
Yeah.
And you're kind of introduced to, like, with the Chinese and everything. That was cool, going through the museum and all that. But that was like the one part that really stood out to me in the entire middle.
Well, yeah, and that had the flow right because it was story and combat more or less at the same time. That the general was shouting at you while you fought his soldiers.
Yeah,
and it got the flow really good.
What was that guy's name? Slate.
Well, I've already forgot. Yeah, let's see.
I think it was
sounds
Slate.
right.
Yeah.
But the
Rock on.
Yeah, it was cool. That was the part that had really the flow going properly. It also kind of introduced you to Booker a little bit more. One thing that they don't do is they don't tell you what the Pinkertons are or were. You find out the Booker's a Pinkerton, and the Pinkertons are kind of like the first private security company.
Yeah.
But if you don't know that, they don't tell you. But they do tell you there's a Pinkerton, so I guess you could hit the Wikipedia. So there's that.
Yeah. All right. Let's hop into the good stuff.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So, the end. This one I actually spent time to create bullet points for because there was so much happening so quickly.
Yeah.
Let's hop into the end. What the hell do you think happened?
In what way?
Okay. Maybe that was a bad starting. Okay, because like,
Are you talking about like what I think the ending was?
to me, the ending isn't really the final third of the game.
Okay.
To me, the ending is the boat scene, and then the explanation.
Like the airship?
Really the last hour of the game is what I consider the true ending.
So everything after the asylum, basically.
Let's talk about the asylum.
I liked the asylum. It was interesting.
The asylum was really weird. It had, first of all, that weird dude who I still don't know what it's called, who just had that little light that would scan for you, and he had those two like French or like bullhorns or whatever sticking out the sides that would toot that extremely loud whistle blowout, and it would basically let everyone else know in the room all those little weird. Some of them looked like they were Benjamin Franklin, and some of them looked like they were George Washington. And they just had these like billy clubs, and it was like a horde.
Yeah.
And it was so unfortunate because you would waste so much powers and bullets and ammunition on them.
Boys of Silence, they're saying is what they were called.
Oh,
Although
okay.
it doesn't seem the right name, but okay, that's what
Whatever.
they say.
Unfortunately, those guys didn't drop anything. I remember wasting all my bullets and ammo on them and rocking up and just holding X, and it was like empty, 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 and I'm like, oh crap, these guys don't drop anything.
Yeah.
So at this point, luckily it was right before that was one of those totally cliche video game moments. They actually have two of them in this game. One's right before the asylum and one's right before the final airship. Where there's kind of that room you walk through that kind of stockpiles you, and you're just kind of like, okay, something big's happening. You've seen it a million times in a million different games, and unfortunately, I really look past it. Yeah, but it lets you know that, hey, one of the big battles is coming up. So I thought those little horde guys were creepy, and it was a hell of a fucking battle to push them off.
Yeah, absolutely. It was possible to sneak past them, but it was really hard. You kind of had to, you had to Metal Gear it. You really did.
They found me every time. I tried it the first one or two times I saw that dude, got caught. After that, I just went in guns blazing.
The one time I was able to get around them was there was a room where there was a bunch of stuff hidden behind them, or like on the floor near him or something like that. I was able to get around them that one time, but every other time I sprung the alarm.
And I don't know if you remember this, but one of the creepiest rooms in Bioshock Infinite, the entire game, was in the asylum. When you walk through, and there's just parts for these things, and there's like sideways George Washington masks, and like and you're just walking through, and there's just like hundreds of George Washington and fucking Ben Franklin faces and masks turned sideways and upside down and stacked on top of each other, and just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It was creepy.
It's creepy. It is very creepy. It's kind of like it's basically like a re-education center, and it's messed up. But it's an interesting part. It's the one part you have to go through without Elizabeth, so you have that extra bit of challenge there.
Yeah, because there's nobody scrounging anything for you or letting you know. Because a lot of times she would tip me off. My head would be like searching through a trash can or something, and she'd be like, she'd scream whatever to let you know that somebody had spotted us or whatever. So I don't know. All right. So to me, is another very thing taken straight out of every video game ever. Toward the end, when you finally come onto the airship, it was a very test everything you've learned in the entire game here. This is what it was all building to.
Yeah.
Every game does that. God of War, all of them do this, where everything you've learned, all your traits, all your attributes, all your weaponry, all your special powers, are all coming down to this one moment. And this is it for that game, is that airship advancement.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's really interesting. Unless you consider Lady Comstock a boss, there really is not a boss battle in the entire game.
Not really. I mean, I think the first time you meet one of those fireflies or whatever, they're kind of like the Murder of Crows guys. I can't remember what they're called. Crows.
Yeah.
The first time you meet those guys, they're kind of a boss. But beyond that, and then like the handyman.
They're not even that hard.
No, they're not. And they're surprisingly easy. The handyman are a little tough if you don't hit them in the heart. So if you just try to take them straight on, and the motorized patriots, if you try to take them straight on, could take you out pretty easily. But even then, it's just a matter of getting behind them or shooting them in the heart, and they're.
I used to always take the Patriots head on. I didn't care. The thing would always pop up. They're weaker in the back. I'd be like, dude, he's 50 yards in front of me. I'm just going to shoot him from here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to run all the way around where he's sitting there with his double machine gun turrets just plowing into me just so I can get the back so it takes up a few less bullets.
Yeah.
Just going to snipe him from back here.
Yeah. The only time I didn't do that was when the big airship battle where they're trying to take down the airship. At that point, I would let them be drawn to the weak point, and I would just get them from behind because they were so distracted by that. And that's how I killed them more easily. But I played it on easy. It was probably harder if you didn't do that.
Yeah, I played on normal. There was a vast difficulty spike on that portion of the game. Significantly harder than anything that had come before it. By a large margin. Not like slightly harder. It was like I was playing on a whole different difficulty. I died like 2 or 3 times trying to do that. I had to keep restarting it. I was actually texting you throughout it, bitching about it.
I remember that.
In retrospect, it was really fun. But it was frustrating as you were playing it.
You do feel accomplished once you get through it, though.
You very well do, yeah. Like I was saying, I actually, that's how I figured it out. The possession was what I was utilizing to... It wears off very quickly on the Patriots. But like there's like dozens of those regular guys coming in every wave that are very easy to kill. They're just basically so they're 1-shotters or 2-shotters and you kill them. But mixed in there's beasts with the rocket launchers that used to stay up on the balconies and just keep trying to shoot at the blue glowy power thingy of the ship.
The thing to protect.
Yeah. So you had those guys. Then you had Patriots dropping in the front of the ship that were slowly coming down toward you. And those guys were coming in quite often. Luckily, at this point, you're actually able to use the Songbird.
Yes. To take down the ships that drop those guys off.
I was only using... See, this is how I found out to get through it. Because I kept using the Songbirds first to take out the drop ships. And then every time you recharged, which took an awful long time, once you attacked the actual blimps. So I would just keep trying to send them over there to get through it. What I found worked better, and I don't know if this is going to hold true when I try to replay the game on hard or not, what I found worked better is use them occasionally for the ships, but use him more so on the, you know how they had those little red circle bomb drops areas that would come up on the ship? So even though the 2 Patriots would start kind of far from one another, as they came in, they would narrow. And there's this perfect spot where you could drop the Songbird. And it was such an easy kill for the Songbird that his cooldown period would be really, really fast. So you could drop one on 2, wait 20 seconds, then attack the ship. By that time, it would be a big, long cooldown, but they would just be dropping the Patriots down at the front of the ship again.
So you have time to kill him.
So by the time they got up here, he would be cooled down and you could redo it.
Yeah.
And all the while, what was slowing them down even more so for me was hitting them with the possession, right? The green one. And turning them on one another because they would stop.
And turn,
They would stop. They would not focus on you. I would actually hit one of them twice, not both of them. Because they would turn on each other, stop in their tracks, and buy you time for A, the recharge, or B, to clear out some of the other guys, and C, maybe take out a blimp. All just, you could do a bunch of stuff while they're fighting one another, and then you just keep hitting the same Patriot, and they would just stand there and shoot each other. Not like they were non-existent. It was beautiful. So
That's a good strategy.
That's how I got through it.
That makes sense. Well, you played in the harder mode than me, so it's probably you had to do a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
I just went in guns blazing and
Got through it?
got through it.
Made it my bitch. Then, of course, after that, all the
exposition all at once
starts.
Yeah.
You're basically at the very end of the game. There's really nothing to... Because it's cool, because then Elizabeth invites you to the front of the ship, right? And you kind of go up there, and it's like a Titanic moment or whatever. Then you're getting a little closer to... What's that thing called? The thing that gives Elizabeth all her powers. Why I should know this.
Talking about the terror or the...
No, the fucking...
not
the statue that you use the songbird to blow.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember what it was called. That's where you're supposed to go through the whole game to go to this place to get the girl. That's where she was held captive, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, but okay. Anyway, there's this thing that basically restricts Elizabeth's power. And at the very end of the game, you utilize the songbird to destroy it.
Right.
So you blow it up, and everything's coming crashing down. And the songbird almost becomes like released at that point.
Right.
And you start going underwater. And then, but she creates a tear to block the water. No. Excuse me.
No, you know what happens now, right?
Excuse me. This is when the songbird comes in for a full-blown attack.
Yes.
And then one of the coolest lines in the game happens, because Booker's like, something along the lines of, he's right there, he's coming for us. And Elizabeth, because you just destroyed the thing that was restricting her power, just looks down and becomes like one of the darkest characters in recent memory for me in any video game. And just this thing comes over her. You don't even see her eyes. She's just looking down, and she's like, right away, he's like, he's coming for us. And she's like, no, he isn't. And she goes like this and just creates like the ultimate terror. Creates an underwater environment that the songbird can't get out of. And then this is where I felt bad for the songbird. You're watching
the songbird drown.
Yeah. Struggle for life. And then you see the red in his eyes, which was attack mode, turn to green when he calmed down around Elizabeth, because she's trying to calm him through the glass. And then you see his eyes crack, and you're just like, Jesus, like, it was cool.
Yeah, it was harsh, but it was... what are you going to do?
It was a mechanical fucking bird. It was a robot.
But if you notice, all the other mechanical stuff was like built around people.
Yeah.
Except for, not the Patriots, though. The Patriots were machines, weren't they? So maybe it was like that. I don't know. It's hard to say whether the songbird has a person in there somewhere or not. But it seems like it has feelings.
It really does.
So it is kind of like, you're like, oh, but what are you going to do? I think Pirates, the noise that it makes as it dies is so, like...
It was creepy.
It's creepy, but it's kind of heart-wrenching. You're like, it sounds really sad, like almost like it feels bad, But at the same time, you're like, but you were like gonna kill me. So
yeah, and that's the point where Elizabeth just becomes Elizabeth. It's unfortunate it's at the end of the game. You don't really get to experiment with the amount of terror hopping and power that she truly possesses, but you get the gist of it when she could just wave her hand and just stop the songbird.
Well, it's great. I mean, first of all, you have a nice little return to Rapture, which is cool.
Yeah, we're getting that.
Well, that's what that is when she kills the songbird.
Yeah, because then you go down. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
okay. You go down and then you look up in the water and you're like... I didn't believe it when I first saw it.
I knew it as soon as we appeared, as soon as it flashed. Because you can see the bridge across the way.
That's what I was looking at. I'm like, no way. As you were sinking.
Yeah.
No way they're dropping me into Rapture right now. And you see all the skyscrapers with the lights pointing out.
Yeah.
I was fucking sick. Go ahead.
It's just cool. You're like, I knew it as soon as I saw it that because you drop in that room, you can see the underwater walkway. I'm like, oh, this is fucking Rapture.
Like they fucking did it.
Yeah. Like, oh, that's bold.
So
and you just see the songbird kind of on the other side of the glass.
To me, it was almost like shot for shot the ending of the original Bioshock 2 teaser, which was the skyline underwater with all that green milky stuff and all those lights coming out, those spotlights.
Yeah.
And then, that creepy music played, and then it said Bioshock 2. And it like and I watched that thing like 20 times in anticipation for that game. So when I saw that, I'm like, no way, that's like straight out of the trailer.
And if you walk around, that's the beginning of the first Bioshock.
Because then I did experience. I was looking around a little bit. Hey, Jathan. So I'm looking around, and it was very, very limited in Rapture.
No. There wasn't much there.
Yeah.
But it was cool.
It was a very cool homage to the first two. And then, of course, did you have anything else on Rapture?
Just that it was really cool. And you can go, if you go up the stairs, you can see the, the vending machine with the Garden of Eden or whatever. Yeah. Oh, that was awesome. Oh, Gatherer's Garden, that's what it was.
Oh, the plasmid machine?
Yeah. Oh, that was so cool. The little sisters on the side. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was like a nice little callback.
Yeah.
That's the part where I think it's the part where you get knocked over in the first game. Is that but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the first
one.
I played the first one a long time ago.
Well, I replayed the beginning of it not too long ago because I got it from my computer on a Steam sale. I'm like, I'll replay this. And I replayed it for like 15, 20 minutes. So yeah, the bathysphere that you go and get into with Elizabeth is the one from the first game. Where you go back up. Yeah, that's the bathysphere from the first game.
That I didn't catch.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Alright. Where do you want to go from here? Do you want to keep talking? Like, I have... Because then at the end is just such an... Like, right after here, Rapture was the first big, like, to me. And then, like, it was rapid fire. Just all the elements that came out. I don't know if you want to keep going in order, if there's something you want to hit on. Because I got the lighthouses. I got the dozens and dozens of Elizabeths and
Bookers
walking around. I got, of course, the two huge reveals at the end of the game who Elizabeth and Booker truly are. The scene, like, there's where do you want to go?
I liked that they had you play through the ending. In fact, while you're playing through that part where Elizabeth is leading you through the lighthouses, you can stop and take a different path. And she'll go with you and take that different path. It doesn't change anything about the ending.
I only picked the one that seemed logical. Can you go into other universes, or will it always bring you to the baptism?
It will always bring you to the same universes. You can't change that part of it. It's a game, you know. They can't do infinity.
Well, I didn't know if you could go. I didn't know if you could go dick around before the baptism, and I just went straight to the baptism.
No, I tried. No, you couldn't. But as you walk around, like because she builds the paths as you walk them. If you stop and turn around and go in like a different direction at those like points in the docks where you can kind of go left or right, she'll build the path that way. But it still leads you to another lighthouse.
Yeah.
And the same story stuff, as far as I can tell. I mean, I didn't actually stop and replay the ending a second time, but the way I gather it is it's, you know, the selections were so small that didn't really affect anything. It was just a way to kind of keep you playing and make it more, you know, kind of like fun. But it's really cool that they could have just presented that as an incredibly long, really well done cutscene, and they kept you moving through the whole thing, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
So you kind of experience it as they're doing it.
I liked how everything turned into lighthouses too. Where at first she's just like, oh, you as Booker, you're just sitting there, you're like, oh, those are stars, and she's like, no, those are all the different worlds and everything. And then you get closer and then it like changes, and then you realize she was right, and they are all the lighthouses that lead to all the infinite possibilities.
It's kind of like a room full of like portals or time machines or something along those lines, because basically that area with the lighthouse is just a bunch of lighthouses all over the place, and you're running from lighthouse to lighthouse to lighthouse, and it's a great way to talk about the idea of causality and alternate dimensions, and you know, just the theory that for every decision you make, you're creating two alternate realities, which is also a great thing in the show Community, which is one of my favorite shows, because there's a scene where they have to go get pizza. They're all having a party at someone's house, and they have to go get pizza, and someone rolls the dice to see who has to go get the pizza. And one of the characters is like, wait, just so you realize, you're creating 6 different realities when you do that. Yeah. And they're like, whatever. He throws the dice, and they go through each of the 6 different realities. So it's kind of like, I mean, they didn't influence each other at all, but it's the same concept where, you know, by making a decision, you're also creating, you know, possible alternate decisions.
It's when we were talking right after the game, what did you say it reminded you of? Because I came right back at you, and I'm like, no, it really reminded me of the butterfly effect.
Oh, yeah. I'll pull that up.
Yeah, because as we were playing it, it was just like that. You start realizing that any little thing that changed basically created another lighthouse. And the other lighthouse could be used for another playthrough. A whole new set of everything happened. Nothing... You were playing one possibility. You find that out at the end. The game, the title only made sense to me 30 seconds before the game ended.
Yes.
You're like,
Absolutely.
oh, infinite. There's infinite portals. This could have happened in an infinite different amount of ways, and you only got to experience one. The whole game, the whole time you spent just blows up. It's like, I only saw this one route out of all of these that could have came about.
Oh yeah, I said Twilight Zone.
Okay.
Which deals with that, but Butterfly Effect is a very good way of looking at it, because the ending of Butterfly Effect, especially the alternate ending of Butterfly Effect. Did you see the alternate ending of Butterfly Effect? Because the ending is where he like tells the girl he hates her and wants her to. The alternate ending, he kills himself in the womb.
I thought that was the real.
Was that the real ending?
Yeah. Because
Okay,
he finds out that's the only way
To stop her.
to stop everything.
Yeah, maybe that is the actual ending. I could have sworn it was something else.
Okay. Let's
yeah.
get to the three main realizations, and then I want to come back to that with the baptism.
Okay.
Okay. So let's do the realization that Anna is Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. That was good. I mean, it's a little forced, and then the AD on your hand totally makes sense because it's Anna DeWitt.
Yeah.
It's not the biggest revelation in the history of writing, but it is a nice twist. It certainly makes a lot of stuff in the story make more sense, especially when you find out that Booker is Comstock.
Which is the next one.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, here, let me just list them off. We
Sure.
can talk about all of them. Okay, The first one I had was the realization that Anna is Elizabeth. Then the realization that Booker is Comstock. And then, of course, the realization that Elizabeth is your daughter the whole time.
Yeah. Thankfully, there's never anything creepy going on between the two of them. There's no Star Wars moment.
Yeah, which would have been a little awkward.
Yeah. Thank you, Ken Levine, for not doing anything weird.
I never even thought of it that way. My brain didn't even go in that direction.
Well, it could have though, because she's got that, you know, she's a cute character, and
Yeah.
she's very energetic, so she draws the player in more than a few people I'm sure had like the little, you know, character crush on her. So you kind of project that on like. You would kind of project that onto her through Booker, because Booker is your conduit through the game.
Unfortunately,
So-
you don't even know, aside from the cover art, you don't even know what Booker looks like.
You don't, because I think, well, and I don't think that you're supposed to be Booker. I don't think it's one of those situations like with the silent protagonist where you're supposed to fill yourself in. Booker is a complete character, but you never really do see him.
Aside from those minuscule little, when it starts dropping the hints in the latter half of the game, where it starts subtly explaining that you are Comstock, and that you've lived in these different terrors before and made these different decisions. You see those little clip-it pictures right next to the voxophone.
Yeah.
That show Booker DeWitt's face, but I can't make it out.
Yeah, no, until it's really spelled out for you, you're not sure. Yeah, the only time you really see Booker is when you are in the lighthouses and you see other Bookers running around, and even then they're far away.
Like I think I was a little slow figuring all this out. Like it really didn't hit me until pretty late that it was my daughter. I think it was during the scene where you physically had to pick the child out of the crib and hand it to the Lutesses, and I still wasn't sure
Yeah.
if that was Elizabeth or not.
Yeah, even then it's not. And then at the when you see him running after Elizabeth later on, trying to get her back, and then they reveal how she lost her finger, or part of her finger.
God. No, go ahead. You can talk about it now.
Yeah, I mean that's when it really gets spelled out for you. And the Lutesses are your first clue that it's Elizabeth, because you have all those things earlier talking about how Lady Comstock knows that Elizabeth is not her daughter because she didn't give birth to her. But she's still somehow related to Comstock, because the Lutesses kind of say that she's related to Comstock. So you know something's
Only
up.
through a tear.
Well, yeah, but it's the same DNA, more or less. It's the same...
Yeah, because then you find out that Comstock was unable to have a child. So
But was it Lady Comstock or Comstock himself who was unable to have a kid? I'm trying to remember. Do they say what
Comstock.
Is it Comstock?
Because Comstock could have just impregnated somebody else.
That's true.
The whole
Okay.
the whole point behind this was Comstock couldn't have a child.
Kid.
So he had the Lutesses set it up this whole thing where they would bring Booker through a tear and use Booker's DNA. That, of course, is where Elizabeth gets taken literally through the tear. It closes up as he's trying to struggle to fight with her back,
And her hand
and the
is out,
tear
yeah.
closes up on the pinky. And then you find, because like Comstock's dropping those hints, like, "Oh, tell her, Booker, tell her what happened to her pinky," and you're like, "What the fuck happened to her pinky?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then it all comes together. It's so cool, man. I love how they did it.
Yeah, absolutely. The way it kind of folds on itself as you're playing through it, and like, yeah, I mean, like, Comstock knows a lot. Comstock knows more than Booker about what's going on. So he's saying things like, "What are you talking about?" And you're wondering because you're not. I mean, you're playing Booker, but you don't know Booker's entire history. So as things are being revealed to you, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's my phone.
It's very popular.
Then, of course, the last big thing I think we could discuss, then we could kind of wrap it up, was the baptism. This is where you kind of find out more or less about all the choices you've made, and that you have done this before.
Yes.
And then it ties itself in to the lighthouse scene where you see yourself and Elizabeth running through all the different lighthouses because you've done this many times before. And depending on the decision you make, whether or not you decide to get baptized or whether or not you give away Anna at the time, who turns into Elizabeth, pretty much dictates everything. And then you come to the realization that the only way to stop it, this is why I tied it into Butterfly Effect, was to kill yourself before Comstock was...
It's not even you that realizes it; it's Elizabeth who realizes it, and she and every like variation or
then all the different all the Elizabeths come together and gang up on you.
Yeah.
God, was that messed up?
It was dark. It was absolutely dark. It was interesting. It made sense. Like the whole the fact that the only way to stop anything from happening was to keep a decision from ever being made. Because either any decision you make creates those alternate universes. So by keeping you from making that decision, she is stopping the creation of Columbia and all those other awful things from happening.
Well, because Comstock never exists because he never gives her away.
Right.
Which is so fucking messed up.
It's twisted. It is twisted. But there's a logic to it.
Yeah. Bring us the girl and wipe away the debts.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, and that's what happened. You brought them the girl, and she wiped away the debt.
Yeah.
In a very twisted and convoluted but logical way.
All right, I got one last Jesus Christ, sorry about that. Got one last thing, and then we'll close out the show.
Okay.
Is Booker DeWitt dead?
Not according to the ending, which is strange. It means one of two things.
There's the little section after the credits. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, according to the ending, he's dead. When those credits start rolling, he's drowned. Which makes it quite a downer. But then if you sit through the credits, there's a post-credits sequence where Booker goes into Anna's room, and I think she's older, right? She's not necessarily like a teenager or anything, but he goes in the room and there's no crib in the room anymore, right? I don't recall.
It seems like she's older.
Yeah. So that implies that even though the decision was either Elizabeth didn't finish what she set out to do, or she cheated somehow and was able to keep things for a happy ending.
See, I think this is where a lot of interpretation, and I was reading up on some of the things on the internet, and a lot of people view this different. I think Booker's alive. He only killed himself in one reality, the reality that allowed Comstock to come to be.
That's possible. That's possible that she killed all those realities.
But unfortunately, by him killing off that whole section, he killed Elizabeth.
In those realities.
No Elizabeth. This girl that you spent 20-some hours with.
Well, right, because she's
never existed. Because she's Anna.
Yeah.
The girl that you never gave away.
In a way, she's killing herself.
Who just turned into what she would have been had she not been taken captive in the first place, not brought to the tower, not raised by the Songbird, never knew Lady Comstock or Comstock because they never existed.
Right.
Columbia was never invented.
Right.
Because Booker never turned into Comstock in the first place.
Right.
So you have this world where, yeah, you saved yourself as Booker while sacrificing your partner and daughter at the time.
And Columbia
Elizabeth.
in general. I mean, the whole
idea behind
world
Columbia
changes because of that. Yeah. It's pretty deep. Pretty deep.
Pretty messed up, right? Do you have any final thoughts?
It's a great story, very well written. It's a fun game. Was not my game of the year. I think there are some. they spent so much time on this game and so much money. I understand why it
The
came
more
out.
you think about it, it's so like brilliant. Though.
It is.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's good. The story is it twists and folds upon itself numerous times to the point where, it's just it really, you have to really sit and
Dissect
absolutely. You really have to. And I understand why they kind of had to rush the game out at some point, because if you read about how many times the game was remade and redone, and it was in development for like what, 4 or 5 years. It was in development for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to get the game out, and I think that it's a horrible thing to say. If they had like 6 more months, they could have really smoothed it out a bit more. But they could not take 6 more months. They just couldn't. The game could not take it. Ken Levine would have had another idea, and they would have had to scrap it again. So
I heard he's notorious for that too.
Yeah. So I get why it's imperfect, and even though it is imperfect, it's still a great game.
For me, in the event you didn't play the game, you just didn't care about having it spoilered, and you wanted to sit through to hear me and Brian, talk about it and stuff, I still suggest you play the game. It really is brilliant.
There's a video on YouTube, or there was, that just plays through the whole game. If you really don't want to play the game, but you want to see the awesome story, you could be forgiven. I don't think Bioshock is a game like Last of Us or Tomb Raider where you need to experience the game and the story. I think that the two exist separately enough that you could just see the story and get as much out of it. Yeah. But it is a fun game. It is a great ride to take. The skylines are a lot of fun.
Very cool.
The Vigors are cool. The world is interesting to explore. It's just not quite as balanced as I think it could have been.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was a brilliant game. Definitely one of the contenders for my game of the year. I haven't made up my mind yet. In all honesty, I'm probably leaning more toward The Last of Us
so much
right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm letting everything sink in.
Watch Dogs is this year, right? Watch Dogs could take it from...
We'll see. There's a lot of games coming out in the fall because of the new console launch. And there's actually a couple good gems coming out in the next few months before the console's even launched with like GTA 5 and shit like that. So we don't know, but it's a great game. Hopefully you've played it and enjoyed it. I'd love to hear what you guys thought about it in the comments, or if there's something else you'd like to hear us dissect on the regular show on Forward Compatible. We can go into something if you guys had a question about it so we could at least address it.
What's your favorite Vigor, guys?
Yeah.
And gals. Yeah. Ladies.
All right, guys. That's going to... Did you have anything else?
No.
All right, that's going to do us. Thank you for joining us for our Bioshock Infinite spoiler cast. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Run away, I got to